before we start, I'd like to know a little bit about this audience of ours today. How many of you all are gardeners or appreciate the art of gardening? You appreciate it? Is anyone a farmer? Okay. Descendant of farmers. That's true. That is true. No doubt. We're so thrilled that you all are here. Who all are Atlanta? Okay, I'll say Georgia. Georgia natives. Oh, wow. We are looking at 10 toes down. Okay. Who's from elsewhere? And you are from Miami? Miami. Yes. Oh, all right. Okay. And Tennessee. Anyone else? Birmingham. Okay. Wonderful. I saw one more, two more. I was born in Indiana. My folks were first enslaved in North Carolina. Okay. All right now. So we are, all right, so we are excited that everyone is from somewhere else, but I think the common denominator is what we'll be talking about today, land, legacy, and memory. No problem. My name is Vicki Bean, and I'm so thrilled that you all are here today. Out in the little bit of rain that we have, we needed that rain, didn't we not? If nothing else, those collard greens to come up. Something for the fall. So we definitely need to be outside this drought. My name is Vicki Bean, a program manager here. And I've been trying to get some of these folks, well, they don't know. Secretly, I've been trying to get some of these folks here. So to have this occasion of you being here to help us celebrate the 30 years that we've been in this building is wonderful. And we look forward to, I don't know if we'll have an event as big as this for 3 days, but certainly we have programs throughout the year. And you may have been asked as you came in to sign in and register, but also the question was there whether or not you want to be a part of our mailing list, because I know a lot of people say, well, I didn't know this was going on. So this is your opportunity to get a few announcements throughout the year of the programs that we have. So today, in our 10 Toes Down Land, Legacy, and Memory panel, we have, oh, someone took my paper. Someone took my papers. Oh no, what's going on? To identify everyone who's in here, I might have to, well, I could use a booklet. I might have to go to the internet. I think someone took my papers by accident. Is it? No, that's not it. Wait. Someone's got the booklet that's got my paper in it. Where's Tamika? She took my booklet that has all the papers for my introduction. Well, you know what? I might have to have you all introduce yourselves. But in the process, I probably will have to until someone brings me back my booklet. But right now, we have 3 wonderful, I'm going to say, artists who are natural, in the natural environment. We have Charmaine Minniefield. Stand, ma'am, if you want to come on up to stage. I'm trying to kill time until someone notifies my colleague. We also have Miss Abra Lee, who is also on our panel. Take a seat, and I think you can probably turn on your mic at any time. And we have Mr. Bobby L. Wilson. No, my book is one of these, and they ran off accidentally with my introduction. Well, let me see. I'm so sorry. Maybe you all can go to the panel on our website, which is www.cr www.wowblack.com. But I also think, too, I want to have everyone introduce themselves because our moderator is Miss Ursula Johnson. And if you can come on up, then come on down. So I guess we can start first. I want to have you all be introduced. We'll start with Miss Abra Lee. Could you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Can y'all hear me okay?
Oh, let me see. You turn that mic on.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank y'all for coming today. My name is Abra Lee. My day job, I'm director of horticulture at historic Oakland Cemetery in downtown Atlanta, which is a Victorian garden cemetery and public park. We consider ourselves the People's Garden. We are open 365 days a year and accessible by public transportation, and we also service everyone from the most affluent Atlantans to the homeless who come visit our gardens every day. My other job, probably what I'm more known for in the world of horticulture, I run a company called Conquer the Soil, where I do research, writing, scholarship, and exhibition work on Black garden history in America.
All right. Mr. Wilson.
Testing. I'm Bobby Wilson, co-founder of Metro Atlanta Urban Farm, 3271 Main Street in College Park, Georgia. We've been there now for about 16 years. I came out of cooperative extension with the University of Georgia for more than 20 years. Prior to that, I was in St. Paul, Minnesota, teaching high school to part of a desegregation plan. Prior to that, I was at Alcorn State University, a graduate from one of our historical Black universities. So I used to tell folks I've been engaged in agriculture, horticulture for more than 20 years. I'm going to have to say more than 35 years now. So I've been involved and engaged in this movement for a long time. Thank you.
Okay. And Miss Minniefield.
Greetings. My name is Charmaine Minniefield. I'm a visual artist, activist, and my work centers preserving Black narratives. That includes our history, our historic sites, our culture, and our memories. And that translates into many forms, from ancestral veneration to historic preservation to site-specific public art installations. And I have a project called the Praise House Project, where I've advocated for land use in 3 different locations to create a series of installations which uplift the history of those communities, the African American history that has been erased. My first installation was actually at Oakland Cemetery, where we honor the 800 unmarked graves in the African American burial grounds. And we went on to Emory University, where we acknowledge slavery and dispossession and work with the elders and descendants of Oxford, where Emory was founded. And now the Praise House rests at Beacon Hill, known by its citizens as the Bottom, which was a freedmen's town, established right after emancipation. And the families and the descendant community, though removed from that land systemically over time, namely specifically the 1937 Urban Renewal Act, demolished their shotgun houses and put up public housing, and did that all over our city. So those are our public housings were originally freedmen's towns. But it's resting there now, and those descendants are still connected. So we're lifting up their efforts for reparations and preserving Black space in that work. And we have other sites envisioned that the work would continue to move to. So I look forward to sharing more about it.
Ooh, that was an introduction. I like We are going to have a good time. And now, Miss Ursula Johnson, if you could share your history.
So my name is Ursula Johnson. Most people do not know me as Ursula Johnson. They know me as Ursula Kendall. because before I got into agriculture, I was a performing artist. My drug of performance is dance. So as we're talking about preserving our icon, our legend, I am what they call an Ailey baby. I studied under Alvin Ailey. I am third generation of Alvin Ailey teachings, and graduated from Tri-Cities High School, Magnet Performing Arts. And so Miss Judith Jamison, who actually gave me my first start, has recently transitioned.
Yes.
So that's, I'm gonna have to,
Yes.
wave it down to her.
Yes. Moving her
Wave it
on,
up.
moving her on.
But coming back to the land, I didn't know the history of my agriculture space when it comes to land and agriculture and movement and urban ag until my daughter, Kendall Ray Johnson, who is now the youngest certified farmer, not in the state of Georgia, but in the United States of America. She is 9 years old. And I had to do some research because I didn't realize that my family owned land, a lot of land, in the state of Georgia. And nobody uses it. So that's a bit of my story and my introduction. And I'm excited to talk to you all and get to know you and allow the audience to get to know you. So with no further ado, let's get started. I want to ask some general questions, right? How do you see your perspective, your respective fields intersecting with the goals of sustainability and environmental stewardship? I'm gonna read it again. How do you see your respective fields intersecting with the goals of sustainability and environmental stewardship? Anybody can take it. I know Bobby gonna go on forward, 'cause that's right up his alley.
Well, I really took some time because I wanted to be. Can y'all hear me without mic? Okay. I wanted to be specific in terms of what we talk about and be able to address the issues that the moderator wanted us to talk about. But at the end of the day, I hope at some point in time we get an opportunity and a chance to address some of the issues that you have in mind, and that we would be able to answer some of those questions, give you some ideas around some of those questions. So when I think about sustainability and environmental stewardship, I'm always thinking that that is an uphill journey for us. But life as a whole is an uphill journey for us. So we struggle to keep on struggling. And so most of us struggle with environmental stewardship and social justice and the importance of maintaining and sustaining that God has placed in our care. Because at the end of the day, that somewhat puts us behind the 8 ball. My collard greens will never get as big as those who are using pesticides, insecticides, commercial fertilizers, miticides, and all those other things. But at the end of the day, my soil is going to be more healthier because we are practicing environmental stewardship to help maintain and sustain that has been placed in our care for the next generation of a generation that will follow us. What we are doing in agriculture right now is not a sustainable method. I even took time to bring along some black gold. This is what we feed our plants with right here, is worm castings. These worm castings come out of the mountains of Tennessee. For those of you that have not been following me on Facebook, the Metro Atlanta Urban Farm, so you can start following them now. But you can see it. You can see exactly what our collard greens are looking like and how well they are. I just sprayed them right before the rain, 2 days before the rain, with neem oil because I had an infestation of worms starting to eat holes in them. So now we have that under control right now. We're scouting instead of neem oil is an organic certified product. But we're doing more scouting now. What I mean, we're going out looking at each individual plant. We're picking the worms out, and we're helping nature balance itself out by feeding those worms to our chickens that we have on the farm. We are always trying to bring about a better tomorrow for the generation that will follow us. It is important that we build our soil. We haven't always had the best of soil because the soil has not been nurtured. So we plant cover crops to enhance the fertilization of the soil. We plant cover crops to help protect the soil from large rains that we have. This last big rain that we have, one of my floods was totally underwater, about 18 inches. But in less than 2 days, it was totally drained and percolated into the soil. So we were able to, in that fourth day, go in and plant rutabagas, mustards, collards, and turnips, and kale and lettuce on that same piece of land that flooded. So if you nurture the soil, you can have a healthy soil for the generations that will follow us. We like to think in terms of, and I'm telling you what we are already doing. So this is our theme for 2024, environmental stewardship. So it coincides with what we're talking about. Our goal for 2024 is clean air, clean water, clean soil. So that is so important to the quality of life. Most of us, there are so many cities right now that don't have access to clean water. I think about, I was listening to the news in the Carolinas, they are bringing in water because of the flood. It has had an impact upon their watering system. So we are doing, every time I go into a school, and I got something in my pocket right here that I want to share with you also. So must be in this one. I got 2 things in this pocket. We have a card that we call environmental stewardship. And then we pass these out to each student in the school that we go into that visit our booth. Because we want our young people, we're talking about kindergartners, first graders, second graders, all up through high school. We want them to know the importance of the environment and what they need to do. So right there, I'm going to stop right there so I can give somebody else a chance.
Yes, sir. Because I know you can go. So when it comes to environmental stewardship and sustainability, I do know that when it comes to art, it has been a problem, sometimes in Atlanta. So I wanted to speak with you, Ms. Minniefield, to give an insight on visual artistry and how does Atlanta or your work creates that sustainability and bring forth of that stewardship.
My work, I have worked in the public domain with my work for many years. I have murals all over the city, and in each location we're uplifting the memory of an ancestor that's distinct to that community. Ruby Doris Smith Robinson is over by the AU Center. Just down the street from here is Ella Baker. And we do it, I do my murals that way in order to preserve the ancestral traditions, memory, and histories of those communities and those descendants, those people who've lived in that community over generations, continue to be connected to that history. Here in Georgia State, right across the street, most Georgia State students that I speak to do not know what Atlanta Daily World is, or what who Geneva Hoggarbrooks was, or that there's a Hale Woodruff mural inside of Wheat Street Baptist Church, or that there is a photograph here at Auburn Abbey Research Library of a gathering at First Congregational Church held by W.B. Du Bois, or that Big Bethel was the only large auditorium for gathering for black folks. And that information to me is important to inform who we are today. But our stories are forgotten and lost, often displaced, targeted first for displacement. The freedmen's towns that were settlements that became public housing are one example. Bagley Park in Buckhead was an entire community that was placed there before that area was developed in the 1920s, and they had been displaced in the 1900s from Forsyth County. And now there's only a small grave site. But what if that family was given safe access to that land in perpetuity, if they were the stewards of that land at any point? Why is it that black narratives are the first to go and erased, and we are not included in whatever is the wealth building mechanism or equity or institution, access to institutions equally in society? And I think that for me, the stewardship has to do with Sankofa. Let us look back, in order to see forward. If this erasure has happened, how can we protect against it today? If we, right after Reconstruction and the 1906 race massacre happened down the street, and they targeted this community in order to disrupt black potential. And it ended in Brownsville in South Atlanta, which was also a burgeoning black district. So if it did its job, we will not remember. And so many of us, we don't. So for me, it's about stewardship of those memories, of that history. And I'm enjoying so much the elder here speaking about how they and we preserved our indigenous traditional culture and how we interacted with and continue to interact with the land. Like, just to study him and his mission work and preserve it and hold space for it and lift it up. A lot of times art has the mic, We get the attention, we get the acclaim when we can. We are the griots, we are the talking drums. So it does mean that we have the further reach very often. And for me, as a griot and a steward of our culture in that way, I want to tell the story of our people.
I appreciate that. Yes, give a little snap, two snap. All right, so I'm not going to go into environment stewardship with you because I got so much more for you. But I want to kind of do it as a two-piece.
Okay.
So how can we encourage more diverse communities to engage with horticulture and gardening? That's my one piece.
Okay.
You want me to give you the two piece?
Sure.
Okay.
And a biscuit, please, and a biscuit.
Yes. And then, y'all can laugh, it's, and can you talk about the historical significance of African Americans in horticulture?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have you repeat the second question when I'm ready for it. So, in terms of engaging diverse communities, one thing that horticulture, the field that I'm in, which is called ornamental horticulture, so I'm on the decorative side of things, design, beauty, and with that, one thing I learned, I do have a formal horticulture degree from Auburn. It is not necessary to do the work that we do at all. Matter of fact, I know that there are so many people who do it so much better. But with that, what I will say Auburn gave me, and this is important for young people that want to do this work or even adults, I didn't understand the range of what that meant. I thought horticulture meant farming, garden design, or you will start a nursery. I didn't understand that it meant turf grass management and you could leave golf courses. I didn't understand that it meant farming wasn't only food, that you could be an aromatic farmer and you could grow the plants that are produced to create perfumes. And so to bring in diversity, we have to be clear about the language and the message we are giving people that there are so many things that you can do. I didn't know I would end up with a degree in ornamental horticulture, but my actual work is in Black garden history. My mama was the one that was like, of course you can be a Black garden historian. You see what I mean? So horticulture is no different from the world of food or medicine or law. There are so many endless possibilities. You can be a eco-poet, you can be a nature writer, you can be an entomological artist, but our children, our people, our communities don't know that. So we have to
Speak.
we have to share the massiveness. And interestingly enough, our ancestors did all of the jobs I'm saying today. This isn't new. We aren't new to being perfume farmers.
We just didn't know.
Right.
Coming up.
Right. So that's one thing. And I think diversity with that, understanding the specifics, I think is what I'm getting at. So every child may not want to be an agrarian, but maybe they want to be a rosarian. But who's going to tell you that, you know, there are people who get paid very well just to take care of roses, and they're able to support their families in their life. That we Black people have a history of being rose farmers out of Tyler, Texas, even to this day. So it's knowing what I know, but being on the stage to be able to share these things, so people understand how infinite the possibilities are.
That's so powerful, and I hope y'all are listening, because what I picked up from it is agribusiness, right? And that's something that we are scarce in. We don't understand that agriculture is agribusiness.
Yes.
When you go through USDA, they want to make sure you're making what? Money.
Yes.
And that's great. We need to have this conversation with adults, but we also need to have this conversation with youth, because the difference between agriculture and someone playing football, basketball, singing, dance, art, that sort of thing, is they're truly thinking that because they're on TV, they have this fame, they have this celebrity piece that comes with it, that they make more money than agriculture. And when we go in, and my daughter goes and does speakings and demonstrations and things of that nature, she goes from head to toe, right? Agriculture is everything. It's head to toe. So the hair grease, the lotion, your lipstick, your eyeshadow, you know, she does the whole thing, right? Your clothes, your shoes, your socks, you know, and that makes money because we're constantly buying it. Right? But they don't know that young Black girls and young Black boys have access to be the people to create it for other folks to buy it too.
But you know, I want to add, that's by design. That's by design. We have a trauma with the land, right? We have a trauma with the land. And then those of us who were our colonizers and oppressors capitalized on that trauma and created forced needs for migration. So we migrated to urban areas and away from our rural communities. And then capitalism grew as, sharecropping and, transition in the chattel slavery system still enabled manufacturing that was still extracting from the land and often destroying it. While that was happening with, just sort of the civilizing and civilization of what now we know as America, we were being pushed into urban areas to have industrial jobs and low-paying servant and labor positions, while other populations were being brought in to labor on the land. So, when you get into the history of agriculture and the history of economic justice and its effect on, our young people and their perception of themselves, that really does ground, I think, the conversation around place, space, and belonging, like in our relationship to land, you know, and land has always been the largest asset, the biggest asset and commodity of value to monetize. So we're the first to get removed from it, you know. So that history to me also informs why our young people don't have this information to know who all we can potentially be. You know, we've been given a couple of carrots, you know, that usually involve our physical bodies being in harm's way, sports and all that, you know,
Right.
versus being at rest
And in mind.
or in community.
Yeah.
Or in stewardship or in mentorship relationship, you know.
Right.
All of those things have been interrupted. I wanted to
And I think we have to we have to reach out to our elders so that we are able to receive the mentorship, right? I know Kendall's been on your forum quite a bit. Yeah.
I want to add to that conversation. It's just amazing to me that as we look back a week or so ago, one candidate, when most of our rural areas are declining in population, and those small town Americas is kind of fading out, the stores are closing. It's amazing to me how one candidate was able to get 1 to 3% more votes in them areas when there are less people in those areas. I just can't figure that out in my mind. But at the end of the day, we as African Americans are somewhat afraid to be landowners. And I tell college students and high school students, own you a piece of land. Don't rent no land from nobody. Buy it from them. Figure out a way how to pay for it. Now there are programs. Now, agriculture was thriving for African Americans under this last administration. But the one thing, listen to me real carefully, one thing that we could not say that this lawsuit is for black farmers. When we filed a lawsuit for black farmers, I was part of the reduction program. I was supposed to get total debt relief. What happened? The other party filed a lawsuit crying race discrimination. So instead of me getting $300,000 debt relief, I got $30,000 debt relief. That's a big difference. But in the past, African American farmers haven't gotten anything. So now we in the ball game. So what happened? Now this whole situation has turned around. I say what has happened in this country has set us back 50 years. It'll be another 50 years before my granddaughter and my great-grandchildren that's yet to be born will be at a spot in terms of where we are today. So we can't give up. We got to keep up the fight. We got Terry Cosby, who graduated from Alcorn State University, was the chief of NRCS. That means he was over all the natural resource conservation programs in the United States. A black guy who graduated from a historical black school. Now, I doubt if we see more than one black person in this new administration that's coming up. The one thing that we got to do, we got to come together collectively as a group. We got to let our young folks know that agriculture is important to our society. We need to get them in schools, and we need to start getting them degrees, because one day, if this system changes, now I'll be able to feed my family, and I'll be able to feed some of y'all too, because I got 5 acres of land out in College Park, Georgia. But will you be able to go in your backyard and plant you some mustards and turnips and collard greens so that you'll be able to eat? We got a long row ahead, but we got to stay on it till we get to the end.
I appreciate that. I want to add to that. One of the things that we cannot do is we cannot gatekeep either, right? The information listen, I understand that people can go online and find information, but sometimes it takes a little bit of help, right? No one showed me or told me how to get my daughter to get her first farm and tract ID. I had to go digging. I had to go knock on some doors. I had to call a couple of people. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes I called us to say, how did you get started? And they said, baby, you just got to figure it out. Right? Now, mind you, at this time, my child is 4 and 5 years old, who's coming to me saying, I want to grow. Right? So now, if you ask me a question, if I don't know it, I'm like, I know some people who I can put you to, and I ain't scared to give you their phone number, and I ain't scared to give you their email. Because just like I had to do the work, I don't mind passing that information. Now, I can't do the work for you, but we can't gatekeep either, you know, when it comes down to building the generation that is coming up. Right, and we have to understand that the generation that is coming up are not high schoolers. They're elementary school students. So, yeah. Because they coming and they're enthused about it. They're excited about it. They want to know everything about the soil, the worms, the pests, the growing cycle, you know, what different types of plants. They want to know it all. And I think we skip over them thinking that we got to get kids in college now. And that's cool because they got to get that scholarship. But if they're not enthused about it, if they don't have family with land sometimes, they're not excited to go to that 1890 land grant college university on that full scholarship that they're able to give to those students because they don't have any experience. They're just there to get the scholarship, and then after that first year they leave. Or they port to another, degree or whatever. And so I think that if we're doing it as family, start with those kids because they'll push you along the way. It happened for me because I was not trying to be in the dirt. It just fell in the lap. I do want to be able to ask the audience if you guys have any questions before I move on to my 20 questions on this page. Do you guys have any questions you all would like to ask? I know we had that question about, beginner farmers.
Can I ask the audience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, girl, thank you. I got an artist brain. So, the historical significance, you talked about it for African Americans in horticulture. Now, how does that impact today's practice?
How does that impact today's practice? The historical significance of African American garden history, how does it impact today's practice? What I believe is that us knowing our garden history, meaning the roles that we have played in this, I think that it helps to take us to places unseen in horticulture, in agriculture, in arboriculture. And so many of us are so unaware of what we have or what we have built or what our roles were. As, black women floriculturists who were self-made millionaires essentially, or myself. I think I'm a great example of that. My mom, I mentioned, who was a historian, when I was 26 years old, I was hired at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport as the landscape manager. And that was unheard of. That would have never happened in Denver. It wouldn't have happened in Phoenix. It probably wouldn't have happened in Birmingham, but it happened here. And it happened here. It's not just the historical role of gardening. I think it's also the political role. Because I was hired at that airport under a black leader, under black leadership. So everyone at the table looked at me looked like me. So it was the Good Old Boy network, but in reverse in Atlanta. So this is my point about that, and historically knowing that. This goes back to Auburn, okay? So I'm hired as the airport landscape manager. So essentially, now horticulture is intersection with aviation. And I felt imposter syndrome. And it wasn't because I was black, or it wasn't because I was a woman, because I was in Atlanta. It was because I was so young, 27, sitting at the table with, Delta and Southwest and the city of Atlanta aviation. And my mama, this is, you got to remember, this is like 06, 07. This is pre-social media, what it is today. And so I was like, well, no one's ever done what I'm doing. And she was like, you think you're the first black person to be in charge of an airport landscape? I said, yeah, I did. And she said, well, who do you think did the landscape at Tuskegee for the Tuskegee Airmen? So I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? But it was just so real. Like, she hit me like, this is not new. You know what I mean? There are people who came for you who were aviation landscape managers on Army bases where black, people were flying fields. So I think that us knowing our history helps us to just visualize. Even my own university, they bring me back to this day to explain, like, now how did you become not at one airport, at two. I was landscape manager at Bush Airport in Houston, Texas. So knowing our history just empowers you. Once I understood that people had come before me decades and decades and run that airfield at Tuskegee, it was like I felt like a superhero, unstoppable, because I knew I was standing on someone else's shoulder that had that role. And that hasn't stopped any role I've been in, because there's no part of horticulture or agriculture or the plant world we haven't touched. That's why we were brought here, because of our gifts for that. So that's what knowing your history does. It empowers you.
Man, that is so listen. Ms. Minniefield, we need a visual artist mural of black horticulturists and agriculturists from young to old. That's my dream. Okay, go ahead.
What was your question?
No, I was just saying, because of her story and how she feels, and that she, the question that your mom asked about if she's the first to be in that position, in my eyes, I would say yes, all day, every day, not knowing the history that there are other people before you. Now you're making me go do the research. You know what I'm saying? So in my eyes, you would be the person that I would start with first, as that. And I understand that. I know it's another one, but we have to celebrate in the moment. We have to be inspired in the moment. And I was just reaching out to you to say, hey, visual artists, let's get this image on this wall before they roll it down.
Remembering yourself.
Yes.
Let me tie a piece in terms of what Metro Atlanta Urban Farm is doing in retrospect to the airport and what's going on. About 6 weeks ago, Homeland Security came to Metro Atlanta Urban Farm, and they wanted to bring their whole staff out for a day of volunteer service work. And we met with them about 3 or 4 times, and they just didn't understand how they were going to be able to pull it off at a farm. And calm down, we got this. And we came out, they came out, they spent a whole day, they barbecued, they did volunteer work. But at the end of the day, now they're talking about starting a Homeland Security Day across the country at some form or another. So urban agriculture has a tremendous, once people come and see what we are doing, and everybody don't do it the same way, they want to become a part of what we are doing. And so now what we do is agriculture jobs tours, and we got one coming up on December the 12th. Homeland Security is going to be a part of talking to those students about careers in Homeland Security. Homeland Security is tied into agriculture. If we can't secure our food sources, where will we go? Where are we going to be? So now we're starting to get more young people to start looking at Homeland Security as careers. And So it just full circle for me with a black female. Yeah.
I mean, I hate to tell it to you, Mr. Wilson, but female is the future. Oh, y'all didn't like that. I'm sorry.
You know, I had this conversation. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. So the black woman has always played a major role in many of our lives. My daddy was nowhere to be found. I had a stepfather, but my real daddy was nowhere to be found. I don't hold that against him today. He's deceased right now. But during this election, I was telling everybody, well, I just can't vote for a woman. And I want you to think back. The black woman has always played a major role in our families, in raising. And I had a military person to tell me, a woman cannot teach a boy how to become a man. Well, I think my mama did a pretty good job. Thank you.
All right. So I want to ask this question. How can collaboration between art, horticulture, and urban agriculture drive community development and empowerment?
Ooh, okay, so I'm taking that.
Okay.
This to me is a question for the room. I would love to hear how people came to this conversation and what movement work are y'all involved in, and given what's happened with the election and all that's happening in the world, worldwide, from that perspective and that view, how are we mobilizing? And that answer is not singular. I don't know that I can answer that. I am offering my work in that fight, and I've been doing that and embodying that, and I think we all are in our respective positions. We are present and available to the collective movement of liberation of our people. That's how we show up, and I just want to own that in community with everyone in this piece. I have my piece about preserving Black narratives, but that for me means mindfulness, centering our indigenous practices of gathering, acknowledging our movement practice as medicine, like going back through those memories and holding them in my body, but also in society, and allowing for that to happen like right on land, right in a freedman's town that nobody knows is a freedman's town. Like, how is this entire downtown Decatur completely oblivious? This is an actual freedman's town. So being free, right there, performing a ring shout, and then inviting communities to gather in that space. So holding space, like physical space, that's part of the movement work that I'm offering and doing. But I'm really interested, like, who else is connected to land work and movement work? Yes, brother?
So peace, my name is Geechee. You can stand up and say hello. I'm sorry, hello, my name is Geechee. And, so I'm an eco-socialist, and I'm an organizer, emancipatory journalist, and I'm from Charleston, South Carolina.
Charleston.
We coming to visit you.
I'm here now, but I'm from there. So a couple things. I love everything that was being said before. I think one of the goals of mine as an emancipatory journalist is to make sure to preserve not only Black stories, but radical Black stories. Because oftentimes, those stories are one that gets kind of left off the table. So a quick example, like telling the story of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the story of the majority of the Black folks in that neighborhood, not city, that neighborhood was actually poor and working classes. So I think sometimes preserving the story of the most marginalized people within the Black community is important. And then also I would just push back a little bit in terms of this self-made millionaire. Like that's not what happens. I think.
You gotta turn it on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't have
I think sometimes that kind of reduces the life of majority black people who are the workers who producing the wealth for that person who became a millionaire. And then I end with saying this in terms of telling our story. Gullah people were brought to here. Now when I say brought, I mean forced, kidnapped, and forced to work to grow crops that these people couldn't grow, rice, indigo, and these things. So telling the story in a way that is more sober as opposed to kind of like majestic in a type of way, so that we can have like the proper analysis to start to address the conditions that we're in. So I'm for preserving stories, but especially like the black radical tradition stories that always get left off the table. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else is doing any work, empowering, or anything in land, agriculture?
Let me add to the conversation.
Okay.
We have to very much be aware of designs. And I'm talking about long-term designs. You know, it took 50 years to overturn Roe versus Wade. 50 years. That's by design, long-term design. And there are other things that's coming that's going to be long-term design that we have to be aware of. So we can't go off of those news bites that we are hearing. And I want to go back to empowering community and improving businesses in our community, cleaning up vacant lots and turning them into productive pieces of land. I want to go back to inviting schools out to the farm where you set aside space. We have picnic tables set up out there. We have podiums for speakers to come in and speak. So designing space on your farm, it's not all about planting a seed and watching it grow. It's about working in and with marginalized and underserved communities to help improve the quality of life for those people who have been left out of the mainstream of society. It's about making a difference. And that's what we thrive for on a consistent and daily basis. I was a 2022 CNN hero because we fed people during the pandemic that hit. More than 25,000 families came through our farm and got food. It was just Monday that I fed over 100 people. And I get an opportunity and a chance to see people from all walks of life. The Mandela Fellows have been coming to Metro Atlanta Urban Farm for 14 years. I get a chance to see those homeless folks sitting on my wall every day when I pull in. Miss Wilson, can you give me something to do? I just need $2. Miss Wilson, you got any food for me today? Can you help me? Can you help me? So it's about making a difference. So we got to do better in terms of, and look, we don't have time to cheat our community. We don't have time to cheat our community. And so many of us go to those jobs every day and we cheat those students in that school. We don't give them our best. I've been trying to line up students to go on the agriculture jobs tour for months. Principal said, can you give me one more day? We've been working on this for a whole month. I got 30 slots that I can take students on. We take students down to Tuskegee every summer to their summer camp. And some of those students have made a decision because they participate in the summer Explorer camp that they want to go to college and they want to get degrees in agriculture. I got students right now, a guy that graduated from Washington High School, he was almost on the street. Now he's down at Alcorn State University, thriving, on the honor roll, full ride, scholarship. Metro Atlanta Urban Farm got scholarship for your students too, if they want to go in agriculture, and if they want to go to a historical black school. Thank you.
We have inspired.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't he inspire?
We got a question from
Inspired.
So, quick question. I heard you says something about, as it pertains to the environment and ecology of the land, that the Department of Homeland Security will be with y'all, and knowing that they have like more of a history of not being so pro-black and suppression of speech. Like how is that connection or relationship happening with you?
I want to point out earlier he had spoken about this administration, black farmers thriving under this current administration, but that is about to change. I'm assuming that it's in that environment that this relationship probably sparked. But go ahead.
We have a question in the back. Or a statement. Come on, baby, we family now. Come on.
When we talk about showing up for our students, to me, the way everywhere I step is sacred. So when we talk about land in memory, when I'm walking into a school building to serve a child or support a parent, I teach children with disabilities, it's always in my forefront that wherever we are is a sacred space. Now, how you respond to that in your work, when I show up, the space is sacred, the student is sacred, and because of that, you may have forgotten who you are, so when I'm teaching you, I'm there to help you remember. I'm there to help your parents remember, because whatever the narrative that the healthcare provider may have told them, that's not the story about your baby. Mm-hmm. And so the legacy of that, it's all intertwined. And then in my personal life, my family is from the Lithonia, Decatur, Flat Rock community, and I'm doing my research right now, and we had a family story of there was a house that was burned down. A lot of my family members ended up being killed. And I'm going through the AJC, and I'm talking to my family, and the story that the AJC had as to why this fire happened is not the family story. The family story is some men in some white sheets did it. The AJC said that it was a kerosene fire blew up or something in the house. And I'm showing this to the family. They're like, no, that ain't what we heard. Or another lynching story, all of these things. So now being a revisionist of my family's history in that community and not realizing there's so much that my great-grandfather owned a cotton. He was a sharecropper in that area off Covington Highway. I've even found a cemetery in the middle of some houses. I'm doing the plots and I'm driving, and I'm ending up in a cul-de-sac. And my great-grandmother's name was Annie. I felt like Michael Jackson. Annie, are you okay? Are you under the house? But actually it was behind us. I had to walk through these people's yards to get to the cemetery. So all of these things. So when I'm working in the community that I serve, which is in DeKalb County, to me, I'm like, this is my land, all of it. Because blood from my family was shed here. So this is sacred. Even in the bottom, I had aunts who lived in those projects. So everywhere I walk, that's the mindset. And when we talk about our children as a result of what just recently happened, how they say, oh, they don't know our history, they don't know how to fight. Well, baby, they better learn, because it's about to be a new generation here of people who need to understand this history so that they can do the work. But in this current history that's being made, they're going to need the tools. And there's a song by Chance the Rapper that says, the people's champ must be everything that the people can't be. For right now, we are the champs. And so for those who can't be right now, we have to be these models to show them what a champ looks like, because we're going to need to stagger breathe. I minor in music, so in order to keep the song going, you're going to have to stop so I can get a break, because we got to keep it going. And we have to practice stagger breathing, because rest is part of the revolution. We can't do it all or we're going to burn out. And so that was a lot. But
Speaking those indigenous terms over there, I hear you, sis. Descendant, right? It just, he's speaking the free liberation, black liberation language, yeah.
What I heard in the conversation is that what's happening right now in terms of banning books so that the truth cannot be told, so that we don't have access to the truth. It's the same thing that the Journal and Constitution did with their story. Because at the end of the day, what they don't want is they don't want their children feeling sorry for the perpetration that they put up on us, and then they become too soft to keep fighting the fight, to keep moving towards a more pure society. Thank you.
So I did want to go back to the comment I made that the young gentleman addressed about the self-made millionaire comment. So the person I was referring to is a black woman from Darlington, South Carolina, named Annie Mae Van Reed. And black women like her, Bessie Mae Weaver out of Kansas City, Missouri, these were queen makers and would teach, opened floral design schools to teach our people how to do design work and beautification and build flower farms so they could have their own money. And the reason I bring that up is because we have to be real about the level of money that's moving in the world of horticulture and agriculture, and the level of money that it even takes to be in this field. When students are already in a horticulture degree, I champion them. But if they are entering Auburn or any other place and they are expected to come out of college and take care of themselves off the rip, I can't tell them to go get a degree in horticulture when you're paying the same amount of money for an aerospace engineering degree. Tuition is tuition. And I say that because I sit on this stage because of people putting money behind me. And I'll give my sister's here, she's in the back, Erica wave. My first job out of Auburn, I lived with her in Gwinnett County for free. She didn't charge me rent, and I lived up there for 2 years. And it took 10 years of my career, and this is a level of privilege I'm owning, where my parents helped me pay my bills, so I was able to become Abra Lee with enough credentials behind me to go to Bush Airport in Houston, Texas, to be a Longwood Fellow. You see what I mean? Like, it takes so much money just to be. Now I'm okay, and the only reason I'm okay now is back to generational wealth. And I live in my parents' home. They both passed away. It's a paid-for home in Southwest Atlanta, right? You couldn't live in my neighborhood now and work at Oakland Cemetery as director of horticulture and make $70,000 a year, which is what the salary is for. So money is needed. I'm not saying it shouldn't be spread throughout community, and I don't mean it itself as self only. So I wanted to clarify that. And I'm so glad that you referred to Charleston, because there is no conversation about black garden history, landscape architecture without Charleston, because when you look at Magnolia Plantation, you look at Middleton Plantation, the work that this gentleman's ancestors did there, that is landscape architecture. But we say that the enslaved people worked the fields. What they did is that they graded the land. The work that they did to this day is land engineering, and that's what they were doing. And just the legacy of, I brought up Middleton in Charleston. There's a gentleman, the vice president of horticulture there is a black man. He's been there 50 years, named Sidney Frazier. And he is the Camellia King, and everybody must look him up. I can't even take people seriously when they're talking to me about Southern horticulture and they don't mention Sidney Frazier. And it's almost like he's unheard of in the world that I work in public gardens. So it's not a linear thing by any means. It's just so many levels and layers, and it's honestly not fair. And it's harder for us because we don't have that money behind us. Like I said, at Auburn, it's a good old boys network. The money is there. What they couldn't hide from me was the playbook. We all sit in the same class together. So I was able to take that book and say, well, I know I probably can't go work for John Deere, but I bet you I can get this airport landscape manager job because there's black political leadership there. So I just wanted to address the complexities of the career. It's just not so simple. And so it's back to what you were talking about, gatekeeping. And telling all the behind the scenes business of what it really takes to thrive. I'm not talking about survive. I'm saying thrive. At this point, I'm thriving. Praise God. But I have to acknowledge it. The thriving started with people like my sister, people like my mama and my daddy, who said, you know what, we're going to support your horticulture degree, because they understood the long game. My dad was director of parks for the city of Atlanta under Maynard Jackson. My mother grew up on a self-sufficient farm in Barnesville, Georgia. So they knew I was going to be more than a gardener, and there's nothing wrong with being a gardener. They understood leadership, and they understood the financials and the just where this could go, things I couldn't even imagine. So it's a lot. It's complex.
It is. It's always peeling back your own onion.
It is. It
You
is.
know, to
And that's just
find-
my journey. But I
Right.
can imagine. I can only imagine. Your journey.
But sometimes our journeys are similar in so many ways because I'm an only child. My mom's an only child, and my grandmother is the last of 7. My grandmother gave my mom her house in Southwest Atlanta, gave it, right? My grandmother passed and gave me her land, her house and land right here in Ben Hill, right? So when you say your mom and your dad supported, my mom, my dad, my grandmother, and my grandpa supported me because I wanted to dance. Now, I didn't have anything to do with agriculture until later on, but I had to, once we got there, and I, as a parent, watched my child want to grow in agriculture, then that was she gave me the land. Now let me fulfill the legacy and give her that land so that she can thrive and go past what I could ever imagine. Like my job is no longer to be in agriculture for myself. I'm in agriculture for my child, and that's the legacy that I want. She's connected to her great-grandmother on both sides of family, which I had to do the research to find out. I didn't know that my grandmother, who's living now, who's 97 years old, was a sharecropper, like from Rochester, New York, all the way down to Florida. I had to go and do some homework because my child said, I want to grow. So I applaud your family. Sister, we love you. Because that is that land. It takes a village. That is that legacy, and the memory that you have to be able to share that connects. And we have to have more of these conversations with our elders, with people who have different pathways in agriculture, so we can know where to go and how to go and which way to move. Sometimes everybody's not supposed to be a farmer. So
Allow me to share a short version of my journey. I'm probably one of the largest landowners in College Park today, and that's a total of 5 acres of land in one spot, right there on Main Street. And the way that I got to that land, I was working for the University of Georgia as an extension agent. And I went for my evaluation after 20 plus years. At the University of Georgia, you talk about Auburn, a good old boy system. What about the University of Georgia? The district director told Bobby Wilson, if you give us a date that you will retire, we won't fire you.
Wow.
I said, you through? He said, yes. I got up and walked out. It was almost like the baton had already been passed in the long race. I'd already scoped this 5 acres of land out in College Park, which would sets on it is an old historical house that the slave took care of, and behind that house is the slave's house, and now that same piece of land and house is owned by an African American.
That's it.
It's amazing how a supernatural power can work. And after that, we did not miss a beat. Of course, I retired because I didn't want to lose my retirement money. I took my retirement money, and I had talked with some folks that had graduated from Florida and other institutions, and they said, Bobby, if you buy that property, it's a C+, a C- at best. But they could not see the same vision that I saw in it. Now that property is worth more than $2 million. You have to have a vision for yourself. You got to be committed to that vision, and you gotta stick to it. That's how we got to where we are right now. One of the most recognizable names in the urban agriculture community is Metro Atlanta Urban Farm. We served on Secretary Vilsack Urban Agriculture Innovative Committee. We were one of the original members to serve on that team. And one of the things that we fought for that people don't understand is that we need more money for 1890 scholarship. When we talk about 1890 scholarship, when you break it down to the 19 historical black schools, it's only 6 scholarships per university. Vilsack couldn't get it passed, so what happened, he created a new scholarship that's called the Next Gen, the Next Generation Scholarship. And that's why we can get more students, African American students, in the historical black schools. Thank you.
Thank you for your work. He just inspires me, right? Amazing. And so, in that same chorus, I'm on this like prayer for reparations. And how are we holding, our community in position to move towards owning lands that have, or reclaiming lands that have been taken from us? I think all of our family lines have a story of where we've been displaced from our land. My great-grandmother's mother lost her land in Central City, Kentucky. I want to go explore that. What does that mean? I want to understand the legal tools that are available to us to pursue our right to that land. Much of our land was paved over by the roads that are Atlanta. Many of our burial sites, our cemeteries, were paved over. I know y'all have been watching some of that news. So, how are we mobilizing and moving in a direction that positions the 12% of this U.S. population are descendant of Africans who were enslaved? That's not a lot of folks to just empower, to give, wealth to in perpetuity and access to land. We are the stewards of the land when we are positioned and empowered. So how are we moving those ideas forward on a micro and a macro level? And your example is so inspiring. It really is. And I would like to share that example and mobilize some tools and means for young people to acquire land, the USDA, and how are people able to finance land? How are people able to finance farming? How are we reclaiming knowledge around wealth and banking? We've been kept from all that. I was the first to go to college in my family line. My mother was a factory worker. My grandmother was a domestic. My great-grandmother was born on a sharecropping plantation. Literally, my children are the first to not live in extreme, scarcity. I have to say, in my generation, I'm pretty proud of that, especially as an artist and entrepreneur. But this change is happening now, right in our generation and our time. And I just want to be intentional about that in community with you all. If anybody had a response to that idea.
I have a response, kind of something you said earlier, Charmaine, about trauma. So, I'm a real estate professional in the state of Maryland. I live in Florida. And, thank you. Obviously, they say land is scarce, right, across the country. So a lot of people now are looking outside the country. But I get listings all the time in other states where there's land, tons of acres, old properties, probably where there were slaves. And I send them to people, and folks seem like they are not interested because they're in rural Virginia or rural North Carolina. in towns where there probably was slavery. But I see as opportunity. What would you say to that, with that trauma that's lingering behind for us, taking advantage of the opportunity to buy these properties?
Oh, I'm so glad you spoke to that, because there is I will share what is happening for me. I went back to the land that my family was first enslaved as a part of my project. I drove back to Fuquay, Verena, North Carolina. I am a Fuquay. When I arrived, I was introducing myself to, public figures saying, I'm the great-granddaughter of Orly Fuquay. They had never seen a black Fuquay. They said, we've never seen a black Fuquay. So I remember driving and crying for the first 50 miles. And then I passed through a veil. And the veil was through breath. I'm describing to you all an actual healing that I experienced. And on the other side of that breath work, that veil, I was filled with gratitude. And just everything after that made so much sense. Like, I'm going. The entire time I was there, I saw everything through the lens of what my ancestors would have seen. There's a stream that runs through the town, and the town became famous and everyone wealthy in it because the stream was considered healing. This is in 1717. I immediately knew that my family probably were the ones who were plowing the field, as they put it on the history site, that discovered the water, the spring. And our indigenous practices of bathing would have interpreted that water as healing. And all the rituals that probably accompanied it that convinced folks that they needed to travel there in order to be healed, I am sure that came from my family. We have those similar traditions in baptism, right? In ablution, for those who are Muslim. So I was able to rest in our truth inside of this landscape that I recognized I had until then so much trauma. I don't know that I could have seen our story like that. And it was like every encounter was magical. I met the genealogist of that community who had collected 160 years of obituaries, had all the stories, all the information. I found the cemeteries, I found the churches, I was totally guided. I'm having that same experience inside of the Praise House, y'all. I spent around in quiet prayer, meditation myself after the election, and I could feel the memories in my body, like I could fly. Y'all just see the video. But I'm saying that to say there is a process of remembering that we have to go through and rest in, and then when recalling all memories, then allow for the medicine. Because if we don't remember all of the memories, we won't remember the medicine. And so, yes, I had to go to a place of enslavement. Yes, I had to go to a place of dispossession, where the Praise House is now. Yes, I had to go to a place of enslavement at Emory, But if I did not do that, I would not know the name of my great-great-grandmother, Nell Fuquay, who got off of the ship with Gillian Fuquay as an enslaved woman. I wouldn't know it. I wouldn't know her. And to whose gain is it that I do not know her? And then if my grandchildren don't know her, then we won't know our right to that stream that runs through Fuquay, Verena. We won't know our right to indigo, because denim jeans is heavy indigo heavy cotton indigo. That was patented by J.C. Penney's when they were enslaving us in private prisons after emancipation to continue to create. Denim jeans. If black folks just cashed in on the intellectual property of denim jeans, but to whose gain is it that we do not know the story of how we were enslaved in prisons to reconstruct the South? Chattahoochee Brick Company. That was a brick company, all the red brick, the historic red brick in Atlanta is, and the police department was created in order to round us back up to populate those prisons. But no one has to reconcile that history into our present and then compensate us for those harms done. That's why I asked the question about reparations. Let's go. Nobody's gonna tell the story but us. We can't hold it, we can't heal it without our present physical body being willing to have those hard conversations, discussions. But the way we hold it, y'all don't really know how we hold it, y'all know how we hold it. We dance. We dance. That's how we move trauma through our body. We farm, right? Right? So we cook. So our indigenous traditions, they ground us, they heal us, they keep us through that storm. And on the other side is light and gratitude. And I wanted to include reparations.
All right, so we have 5 minutes left. I know you want to.
Allow me to just share this is my last thing, y'all.
You sure, Mr. Bennett?
If you need to know NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service. You need to know that, because at the end of the day, what has happened over the past that we didn't know anything about, they have these different conservation stewardship programs. If you're a landowner, you can get a check at the first of the year as long as you own that land and keep it in a conservation stewardship program, and it's always going to be your land. We don't know that. So we need to get involved in getting us some land, understand which one of those conservation stewardship programs we're going to put that land in so that we can receive that check at the beginning of the year. That's it for Bobby. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. But as we're coming up on this last minutes, would you like to share your last thoughts, or Ms. Abra?
My thoughts are the woman in the back brought up the trauma that's associated to the land. I 100%. We all have to acknowledge the truth in that. In a way that I was able, the best way I found to reconcile that, I was on a panel at the New York Botanic Garden, and Leah Penniman, who wrote Farmer While Black, was on the panel, and she talked about one of her friends from Philadelphia who said the land is not the criminal, it's the scene of the crime. Yes. And so with that, it helped me to understand how the oak tree is not to blame, for the lynching. The cotton is to blame for the pain. And once we can separate that, I have to separate that at Oakland. There's a Confederate section in the middle of our cemetery. Yes, it is my and my team's obligation to take care of it. And what we're taking care of is the land. F them soldiers, we don't care, but we must take care of the land. And when we think about our ancestors, formerly enslaved people who went back to these plantations when the South is on fire after the Civil War, and went back for their roses and their camellias and their seeds and brought them back to their little, I wouldn't even call them properties, these cabins in the woods. That's why we have heirloom plants today, because we preserve those. So two things can be true: the scene of the crime, but also I'm going back for my rose. I want my beauty back because I took care of that rose. So what we were talking about before is it's not linear, it's complicated, but there's so many ways to navigate that. And my last comment about land is a rule of thumb we use in horticulture is 1 acre per gardener. That's really what it takes, a full-time gardener, 1 acre every day to take care of it. And we have to work and learn from people like Mr. Wilson. It is so, I don't want to deflate anybody from land ownership. Again, my sister and I, it's not that we just own the land in Atlanta. We're part of an heirs property in Lamar County. it's a lot of work, y'all. Like, that's a whole other panel and conversation. And we need to talk about that as a community. Is it a group project? And you're not on your own trying to take care of the land. That is trauma in itself, trying to do it on your own.
Thank you, Abra. So it does sound like we need to have a part 2. It's a movement, but I do appreciate you all. Thank you, Ms. Charmaine Minniefield, Dr. Wilson, well, Dr. Bobby, and Abra. And I've learned so much about you all, and I hope you guys learned as well. Please give them a round of applause. Like, yeah, okay, so, you know, let's do this in church, right? Let's do that a little bit better, give them a little bit more, right? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I learned a lot. And we do need a second. Oh, yes. So as we move on to the day, I mean, I don't want to leave this panel, but we got to move on because we got some other quality panels too. This was amazing. So thank you all so much. And yes, you all will be back. You all will be